said, stick by me, I'll be your guiding hand. But don't ask me what I think of you, I might not give the answer that you want me to.
Howdy, I'm Joe, and this is my show, Joe's Rides. In these videos, myself and my glamorous assistant Caden will show you what we get up to in my workshop in town, repairing mostly Land Rovers, along with a few classic cars, hot rods, American cars, all sorts. We'll also do some videos from my workshops at home, where you will see some of my projects, more cars, bikes, hot rods, odds and sods, you name it. So if you like petrol, oil, dirt and beer, then tune in. If you're a bit woke, left wing, if you believe in climate change, or you're vegan, then fuck off!
Today we've got this old 300 series Discovery in. I've looked after this car forever, and it was about 3 or 4 years ago. It's a very elderly gentleman. He said to me, I don't think I'm ever going to buy another car. So he says, can you future-proof this one? So at the time we did, and I welded it all up and I wax oiled it and I replaced loads of brakes and I did the cam belt and did the head gasket and the P gasket and so on and so on. And it paid off. It's very, very rarely gives the guy any trouble. Just recently, a week or so ago, he phoned me and told me that the turbo had failed or was failing. The guy's somewhat mechanically minded. He used to be a fork truck engineer when he was working, but he's long since retired. He's an old boy now. It's not very common for these turbos on the 300 TDI engine to fail, so I suggested that maybe it hadn't, but he said he was hearing a bit of a whistling noise when he was accelerating. In my mind, I'm thinking it's probably more like the exhaust manifold gasket has blown. Anyway, he is adamant that he wants a turbo on it, which is kind of a good shout, I suppose, because without looking, it's got massive mileage on it. I think it's well over 200,000, maybe 2,500,000 actually. So it's his choice that he wants a turbo on, but we'll have a dig. I've got the turbo here. We've got to take the manifolds off anyway to change the turbo. So if the gasket is blown, that will get done during the course of the turbo replacement. So I'll just show you quickly around here what you've got to do. We've already stripped some of this out actually, or Caden has. So you're going to take your intercooler pipe off the back of the turbo there. You're also going to take the air intake pipe off the turbo. We've got oil delivery pipe at the top and a oil drain pipe at the bottom. We've got this EGR. I disconnected the EGR valve electrically many years ago, but it's still got the actual valve on there, which is redundant. In hindsight, I wish I'd have got a blanking kit in for it. It might be something I can knock up quickly on the bench anyway. We've got to undo the 3 downpipe to turbo housing gaskets, turbo housing bolts. They will be seized almost 100%, so we'll get some oxyacetylene on them, warm them up, get them off. And also, talking of the EGR, that needs to be unbolted from the turbo housing as well, and I can guarantee that those will be seized up and will require some heat from the oxyacetylene as well. We've taken the air filter and trunking out of the way. So next thing is we'll undo the row of bolts. It's the same row of bolts, hold the inlet and exhaust manifold onto the head. We've taken a few out. We'll get the rest of them out, get it all out on the bench, and then we'll have a look at the turbo and compare it to the new one. See where we go. Okay, so we've got our turbocharger off, and as I suspected, this is our noisy turbo. It's the exhaust manifold gasket which has been breached and obviously letting some exhaust gas out under load. When the turbo's boosted up, that'll be making a bit of a whistle. So that's what the guy's hearing, but this is what the guy wants. So the customer gets what he wants. The customer's always right, they say. So looking at the turbo shaft, there's a little bit of play there. It's not excessive. There's a little bit of damage to some of the vanes from foreign objects, but it's not really a problem. But anyway, we will stick it on now. The next battle we'll have is removing this EGR housing. It's not even worth trying to undo these 2 Allen cap-headed bolts without heating this up. So that's what we'll do next. We'll get some heat on there and see if we can get those moving. Like I said a minute ago, kind of wish I got an EGR blanking kit in. But anyway, once we've got these undone, It's only a case of popping it back together. So it's kind of as long as it is short. And as I said, this EGR valve has been disconnected anyway. I'm not a fan of EGR. All it does is soot everything up, oil everything up, make a mess of all the turbo and the intercooler and the associated pipework. Just all gets fouled up with crap. Supposedly saves the dolphins from death. This is our new turbo. It's nice. It comes complete with a wastegate and pretty much everything we need in the way of gaskets, etc. Again, this is a brand new one, and there's a little bit of float on the shaft there, but of course there needs to be that for the oil to circulate around the shaft. So again, not uncommon. So yeah, we'll see if we can get these undone now. That's the next battle. We did have a battle, as suspected, undoing the downpipe bolts. We had to heat the nuts up to a cherry red to get them undone. Could you do this at home without oxyacetylene? I don't know, maybe, but you'll be having a battle, that's for sure. You need some form of heat, and like a blowtorch probably wouldn't be enough. So anyway, these two to contend with next. So the next battle in replacing this turbo will be these manifold stubs. So the turbo doesn't come with these two stubs, which are the outer parts of the exhaust manifold itself. They're just a push fit in there, and you can imagine this car is probably 30 years old now, and all the heat cycles it would have gone through. So I'd imagine these are going to be fun for us to try and get out. In theory, they should just tap out. In practice, I think we'll be heating these up probably red hot with the oxyacetylene again, and a battle will probably commence. Okay, as suspected, we had to use oxyacetylene to heat up the turbo housing red hot to knock these stubs out. Caden's just cleaned the ends up with some emery cloth, and now we're just going to use a little bit of exhaust assembly paste on there and push the stubs in, which will then give us a complete exhaust manifold as such. And then we'll be bolting this back onto the head. Alrighty. Okay, so our turbo is back on the exhaust manifold. The manifold's bolted to the head along with the inlet manifold, and it would appear we're on the home run with this job now. Next thing I'm going to do, something quite important that I always do when I fit a new turbo, is where your oil feed pipe goes into the top of the turbo, drizzle some oil down there with an oil can like I am there, and when you first start the engine after fitting your turbo, the turbo will immediately spool up to thousands and thousands of RPM momentarily before the oil delivery pipe feeds it some oil. So potentially you could have it spinning dry, not for a long time, but long enough, bearing in mind how fast they turn, how fast they spin. You could easily damage the bearings on your new turbo before you've even driven down the road. So good idea to pre-lube it. On that note, most cars these days have turbos, particularly diesels. If you want to help the life of your turbo, it's not bad practice that before you turn the engine off, just let the engine idle for sort of maybe 10 seconds before you actually switch it off. And that allows your turbocharger to eventually slow down to a reasonable speed before you turn it off. And when you turn it off, obviously you take away the oil supply to it. So yeah, another little thing, good for your cars, just let it idle for a few seconds before you actually turn it off. Okay, we'll crack on and get the rest of this back together now. So our turbocharger's all back on this 300 series engine. New gaskets where needed. Like I say, it's a job that you probably could tackle at home, but only if you've got some form of heat, and it needs to be quite hot heat, because most of the things you're going to come across on this job are going to be seized. But there you go, it's all back on, and if anything, I will say that it does seem a little bit more responsive and does seem to pick up a little bit better. So hopefully the customer will be happy. Like I say, it was bought here for a whistling noise, which wasn't the turbo at all. It was the exhaust manifold gasket. But the guy wanted a new turbo, so he got that, and he got the new gasket to boot, and I'm sure he'll be happy with it. So I've started thinking about where to mount the ECU, electronic control units, etc., to run this engine, and I suppose the ideal place would be somewhere inside the van. Having said that, I'm looking here on the offside front inner wing, and it's not very busy there at all. I'm going to have to accommodate this power steering reservoir at some stage, or one similar to it, but again I think there's still plenty of room. So I'm thinking about making a bit of a shelf effectively to mount here on the wing. I mean, I could mount them directly on the wing, but I think it'd just look a little bit neater and tidier if I made something, and it might also then lend itself for mounting other things, maybe a fuse box or other things that might crop up when we really get into wiring the van. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a little shelf there, and we'll come back when I've done that. So I've just bent up this bracket here and bolted that to the inner wing, and then I've made another little bracket which will pick up on this pedal box bolt on the bulkhead there. This bracket's nice and wide, so it'll spread the weight on the sheet. So now I've just got to drill some holes in the aluminium sheet and bolt it on, and we should be good to go. So I've just cut out this square bit of aluminium sheet, and we just cut a little relief out of one corner, which will make way for the wiring loom in the corner here above the inner wing. So I'm probably going to make a little bracket to bolt the aluminium shelf to pick up on this bolt here, and then probably a couple of pedestals that will then bolt down onto the top of the inner wing, and then that will give me a nice flat surface to mount the ECUs and perhaps a fuse box, etc, etc. Keep it nice, neat underneath the engine bay, no long wires. Should be good. Okay, it's Sunday morning. I've been out here ticking off a few little jobs, and another one I'd quite like to get done today is address this rat's nest of pipes all at the back of the engine. When we put the engine in, there wasn't a lot of clearance at the back of the engine between the engine and the coil packs, and particularly the outlets for the heater matrix. So we put some pipes on the heater matrix inlet and outlet with sharp 90-degree bends on them, and they are I've got just about to get my fingers down between the engine and the pipe, so we shouldn't have any chafing issues. I've also got this, which is just a breather pipe. Again, we put that on the engine before it went in because it would have been impossible to get it on afterwards. So I'll probably just extend that and stick that out of the way somewhere. That's not of any massive significance. We've got another breather, another heater pipe outlet coming off the back of the engine here, and then another one creeping its way over the top of the cylinder head there. So really all I've got to do is join the two heater matrix pipes and the two heater outlet pipes from the engine all together, and just make sure that they're clear and they're not going to chafe. So we'll have a little go at that this morning and see if we can get that one ticked off. I don't think it's going to be particularly neat, but it'll be functional. There's not a great deal I can do about it really, but we'll give it a go. So I've got to make numerous joins between these 15mm stroke 5/8 internal diameter rubber heater hoses, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use some 15mm copper tubing like you find in your house for your plumbing, and on the end of that I'm going to solder some olives. And the reason I'm going to solder some olives on the end is it'll just make a real belt and braces job. I'm going to use hose clips to join the two together over the copper pipe, so I can belt the hose clips up really tight because they'll be biting down on the copper pipe. But with the olive soldered on the end as well, it will give it a little bit of belt and braces in the event of any pressurisation. The pipe's not going to want to pull off because it's going to come up against that olive which will be soldered on there. So yeah, we'll get some of these bits of pipe cut up, solder some olives on, and they'll make for real good joiners between these two rubber pipes. So there we go, there's my bit of copper pipe with a couple of olives just soldered on the end. I only need a couple of dobs of solder here and there. It sort of flows in anyway. We're not looking for a particularly watertight seal, it's just purely for the purpose of holding the olives onto the end of the pipe. So now my rubber pipe will slide over the top of those with a Jubilee clip this side of on the inside of the olive, and makes for a really good join. Not sure if I invented that, but that's the way I always do it and never have any problems with them. Good, we'll get some of these fitted up. It's Sunday morning. I've only found a couple of little bits of copper pipe in my shed here, and only a handful of olives, so I've managed to make 2 of these, so we can get a couple of the pipes joined up, but unfortunately I have to wait till Monday now to go and get some more pipe and olives. There we go, all our heater hoses are done and clipped up out of the way now. I'm pretty happy with all of that. There's no particularly tight bends, and as I keep saying, I can just about get my fingers down the back of the engine, between the back of the engine and the pipes going to the matrix, so we haven't got any rubbing issues there. And I've also just added a little crankcase breather filter onto the end of the pipe coming off the back of the rocker cover on this side. So yeah, we're all good to go. Another tick. Okay, excuse all our white spots. That's all polishing compound. We're in the middle of wet flatting and polishing the van, so this will all get cleaned off later. Bit of a mess at the moment. Right, next thing, next issue stroke problem we've got to address is the brake servo. So the Ford Transit originally had this brake servo here, which used a vacuum pipe from it to the inlet manifold of the Pinto engine, and it used the inlet manifold as a source for its vacuum. Now, I've looked and looked and looked at this Cosworth engine, and I can't find a source of vacuum for a brake servo. There's a few small vacuum pipes here and there, which are not the ones which are going to be used for a servo. So yeah, I've looked and looked, and I can't see anywhere to pick up a vacuum source for the servo. I've also got another one of these engines laying in the corner of the workshop behind me, a dead one, and I've diligently looked on that, and again, I can't see anywhere where a servo pipe would have been connected. So I can only presume that the car this came out of would have had ABS, almost definitely it would have done, and perhaps that would have used a high pressure pump or an accumulator or something, and not a servo. So I think I'm fairly right in saying that's the case. So I've got to find some vacuum to run this servo, otherwise we're going to have very wooden brakes, which isn't the one, especially with this engine in the van. Here's the original pipe that came from the servo and went onto the inlet manifold of the Pinto engine, which I've saved. So we're going to plug that back into the servo unit, and I've got myself a 12 volt vacuum pump, which I intend to mount down here on the chassis rail, out of the way, tuck it behind the steering column, and it'll be nice and close to the servo, so we'll have a short vacuum pipe to the servo. Fingers crossed it should work okay. Obviously there's going to be some wiring involved, so I'll show you that pump. So here's our 12 volt pump. I'm going to mount that down on that chassis rail, as I said. I've cut myself a couple of slithers of rubber to mount it on, because when this is going to be operating, I'm sure it's going to vibrate and rattle, probably drive me mad. We're going to use a pressure switch to control it, and a relay to feed it, which will be fused, obviously. So today's task is to get this pump mounted, get it wired up, get it piped up. We'll use some vacuum hose here. I've got a length of vacuum hose which we'll just attach quite simply to that plastic hose which was on the van originally, which I just showed you. So yeah, that's today's job. If we can get that on, up and running, that's another tick. So we'll get on with that and we'll come back to that. The other thing we've got here on the bench is the magical mystery box. I'm sure all of you are very keen to see what's in today's magical mystery box. I get somewhere between 5 and 6 million emails every day, letters, etc., all asking what's going to be in the mystery box, but it wouldn't be a mystery if I told you, so unfortunately everyone has to wait until the big reveal. And in today's magical mystery box is a scampi fry. So I'm sure you've been in pubs and similar establishments and had a packet of scampi fries, or maybe you've been to some very upmarket restaurants or posh events where there have been served on a platter or something similar. Interesting little snack that they are, but perhaps not what you think. So scampi fries actually come from the continent of China, and in China they have some really big fish processing plants, and a lot of the parts of the fish which are not used, i.e. the eyes and the lips and the tail, etc., etc., are all thrown outside into a big bucket. And the Chinese, being quite clever as they are and quite resourceful, what they actually do is they cover all this waste fish in glue, and over a period of the next couple of weeks they let the fish rot down, and obviously it attracts flies, and it attracts flies by the thousands. And when the flies come to sit and eat on the rotten fish, their legs get trapped with the glue that the Chinese people have put on the rotting fish. And then the Chinese people creep up with a net, and they chuck the net over these thousands of flies, and as they pull the net up, the flies try to escape, but their legs get stuck to the rotting fish. So when the Chinese pull the flies away, the legs get stuck and get left, and they collect the flies in this big net. And then they dry the flies out, roll them out, bake them, and make them into this delicious snack. Now, they're not actually scampi fries at all. What's happened here is the name has got lost in translation, which often it does when you buy something from China. What they are actually are stumpy flies. So it's the flies with no legs is what it means in Chinese, stumpy flies. And I must say, they're quite delicious.
Stumpy flies. Stumpy flies.
Okay, so we finished that little job. I welded 2 8mm bolts onto the chassis rail down here, and then secured the pump with 2 nuts via the rubber blocks to insulate the pump. And then we've got our vacuum pipe here. This bit is part of the original vacuum pipe. There's a valve of some sort there. I can only imagine it's a one-way valve. So I've cut that out of the original pipe and put it in the circuit. Then we're up to here, we're up to a pressure switch, which is grounded by a relay, which is fed by a ignition live. I'll just go and turn it on, and hopefully we'll have a pump that's making vacuum.
Hey you, remember, like and subscribe.